leverage your localness. Right? There's an element of like, hey, I'm the pharmacy, like just 2 blocks away, or maybe it's not 2 blocks away, but across town or whatever it is, and we do this. Like I'm here in the community too. I'm not a sometimes they'll just like kind of associate at times if you don't do it right, just like a nameless face sales guy or lady, and just make sure you leverage your localness about who you are, because for those docs that matters too. That resonates, I think. That's a cool.
Yeah, and even give them your cell phone number.
Yeah.
If you can't find a medication, if you are having trouble with, just text us, and we'll figure it out for you.
Yeah. How have you seen those leveraged? Like, I guess, and without being like slimy or gross about it, like, is that hey? Obviously, it's a pure, I wouldn't even just say GLP play. Like, I totally get that conversation. That makes total sense because that's an active problem they're all trying to solve. But I would even just say compounding in general, too, is probably an area where it's like, hey, look, if you have some formulation needs because a patient can't do X, Y, Z, I mean, I'm your person. I'm your team for that. Where else have you seen that leverage? I even seen it I think it was Bob or somebody was talking about it, where they're some of these pharmacies have like an initiative to get their staff trained as like I'm going to butcher this wrong, but like some type of social worker, clinical.
Community health workers. I think. There you go,
community healthcare worker and things like that. And it's just like a different way to talk about your staff and your pharmacy than just I'm a pharmacy. So where have you seen like some of those relationships actually bear fruit? I guess is what I'm trying to get for the audience there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Amina is the queen. Amina Abubakar of working with local providers in unique ways that aren't centered around just pharmacy and dispensing.
Right.
But I know that it was a huge uphill battle. Like when we first built out the programs with Amina and her pharmacist Olivia. Built out the programs on like annual wellness visits and chronic care management. That's a really hard sell to get those offices, because they're like, oh no, my patients only want to see me, or this is against the norm. So any way that you can just kind of get in there a little bit is helpful too. But I mean, she's definitely the queen in setting all that up.
Yeah, she's like the Beyonce of provider relationships.
She is, for sure. She definitely is.
I don't know. Yeah. It makes sense. And it's a thing that builds too. Like I look at that as like the second you're useful once, they'll remember that. And it may be 6 months before you even have another opportunity to be useful again. But like, it'll associate good things for you in the pharmacy that you have. So I agree. I was always just kind of like, I like to get your take on that piece of it. And then so the other thing I was going to rotate into from there a little bit was some of the just sales functions and tracking that you guys think that matters is, and what I mean by that is like data dependent stuff. And I'm sure every pharmacy is different. I know that's for sure, but like you go back, you kind of touched on it with the 80-20 rule, look at your data and go focus on the things that are actually making you money. But from a sales perspective, how are you seeing that, I guess, operationalized a little bit inside the 4 walls?
I think that the most direct way to approach it and what we do in our software is, how is everything trending? So you should know, how many prescriptions do we fill per month, per week? What's our top line revenue per month, per week? What's our cost of goods? What's our gross profit? Just on like not your QuickBooks, not your DIR rebate, just on like a gross profit perspective.
Just like
how do we trend?
Standard gross profit, not all the back end dollars perspective. Okay.
Yep. So don't overcomplicate it. Just be able to rattle it off and be able to know. And then who are your top, let's say 10 prescribers by gross profit and by script count? Who are they? And if they change, how quickly are you alerted? Like, when do you realize when they change?
When do you process the signal, I guess? Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes total sense.
And if they do change, why? Why did they change? Did you anticipate that change? Do you like that change? Or does that mean that a significant part of the profitability of your business is slipping?
I see. Okay.
And then what should you do about it? And so then that leads into, well, on my top 10 providers, have I gone and personally visited them and thanked them for their business because they're important. They're important to your bottom line.
Can you find their relationships too that associate with your pharmacy as well? That's another way to do that. Identify those.
Yeah. And then, I mean, we all go to these trade shows and we learn about these new, cool, exciting things, whether we're in a CE program or we're on the trade show floor.
Right.
And then we bring it back to our pharmacy and we say, okay, we're going to do this new great thing. Okay, but what if you just looked at your data first, went and visited your top 10 prescribers and asked them, what do they want?
Yeah.
Because they're already used to sending business into your store. They already trust you. They already, they know the drill. They know your system. The whole team over there knows how to send in business. So like, hey, you send us, like, you're our top compounding doc.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that, but we really appreciate you. And like, when we see a prescription come over from your office, VIP all the way.
And what am I doing right, man? Like, is there anything I'm doing right too? Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong, but tell me what I'm doing right too. I want to do more of those things for you as well.
As a small team, there's 5 of us on our team. We're not gonna lie. We would like to grow. We're working on a few long-term game projects that will allow us to expand in the future. But we realized it's like all of us were kind of used to, just dispensing in the past, right? And then the PIRs just came in. We never had to worry about any of these extra services. We were doing okay and things like that. So, but in the face of all the PBM abuse, I'm actually not quoting it. It's real. So let's remove the quotes. In the face, being faced with all the PBM abuses and unfair payment models, we just had to, as owners, to just step in and learn from other owners and start to see what can we implement. And at that point, I feel like we also had to step up to the game as leaders for our team, because our team, they were used to just filling prescriptions or being a clerk or things like that. And all of a sudden, we're asking them to become salesperson, right? We're asking them to promote new programs or have the confidence in just spreading the message of what is our pharmacy working on, right? So now I feel like we needed some help. Here comes Travis to help. Like, that's when we just jumped on and asked him, how we can be best leaders for our team and support them, mentor them into, polishing some of those skills maybe that they didn't have and help us. And I wanted to give our team our big shout out, Kayla and Julie. Julie handled it great. She's our champion in several programs that are running. And Kayla, who loves the front, she's we're a big snack destination because we're inside of School of Medicine, and people would have to literally give up a great parking spot to go get a snack somewhere else. So she handles the snacks beautifully, but also during those interactions, small 1, 2, 3 minute interactions with customers, she had to find a way to tell them about our programs, like our Narcan initiative. We are in New Jersey. And Cassie, would you say when did that start?
January of 23 is when the Narcan program started here in New Jersey. And it's a fantastic program where the governor came out and said the goal is to get a box of Narcan in every home in New Jersey. So it's a free and anonymous program. The state reimburses the pharmacy. They don't just give us boxes of Narcan. We have to purchase it ourselves and then distribute it. The state reimburses us. It's all great, but then we can offer it to anybody that's 14 years old and older. And so the bottom line is everyone that comes through the door, we're absolutely going to talk to them about it and offer it to them. And we're going to get out in the community, let people know that this program exists, and encourage people to come in and pick a box up. And they can get it with every visit. So if somebody comes to the pharmacy 3 times in a week, if they want it, they could get 3 boxes.
I was going to say, that's one of those things that, a few years ago, I think a lot of police cruisers didn't have that on board. And now it's really commonplace. And, I hope I never need my spare tire and I hope I never need my fire extinguisher. But, even if you're not in a lifestyle where, you anticipate needing that for yourself, you never know. I was actually on a visit to a city once and encountered a situation where, you know, had I had that on me, I could have saved someone's life. You know, just passing by on the way to lunch. You know, it's part of the world we live in now that, you know, you never know when you could make a huge difference in being prepared.
Yeah, we had a couple of people come in and tell us that they were stopped at a red light. There was a car in front of them that wasn't moving when the light turned green. And after it cycled through a couple times, the person got out to check, and the driver in front of them was overdosing right there in the car, was just completely passed out. You know, we have Wawa's here, like a convenience store, and told us that they've seen people passed out in front of Wawa, in the staircase in their apartment building. And these are all places where the Narcan that we distributed actually made a difference. And those people came back in to get another box because they had used the one that they had already received.
A lot of people in the community do not trust big box healthcare institutions.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Because the thing is that, they're just trying to make money. Right. And they don't really care about us. They just prescribe us medication. They give it to us. They want us to take it. And that's just it. And so we knew that we were tasked with building trust between, hey, we are a trusted healthcare institution that cares about your well-being, and we want you to become healthier. And then just enjoyable. You know, a lot of the experiences that people have with the big box stores like a CVS and Walgreens, just plain and simple, were bad experiences, unfavorable experiences that we were hearing about. And so that's kind of where we then began to build our brand off of that. And so when we learned about, these things, that's when we started to build our services. So if in order to make it more convenient, then we have to offer free home delivery, right? Okay. Just like a Amazon, right? Yeah. We know that if we want to make this convenient, we have to deliver right to the door of our patients, especially the patient population that we're trying to support. We know that we have to, they're not going to be able to get up and go to the pharmacy, right? They may not remember to refill their medication until it's absolutely out. So that's one thing that we knew we had to do to make it convenient. Another thing is that we had to turn our pharmacists into case managers. And what that meant was that we had to make sure that our pharmacists knew how to navigate the healthcare system for our patients. So if our patients needed support with their insurance, they needed support with their previous pharmacy, they need support with their doctor's office, our pharmacy team does that for them. And so again, when you have a pharmacy that does that for you, it makes it more convenient. Okay, I don't have to talk to my doctor as much to coordinate that type of stuff. And a lot of people just don't feel comfortable with asking their doctor to do things like change their dosage, switch them off a different, medication, and things like that. And so,
Yeah, I could totally relate because it's weird. Like if I feel like I want a lower dose as a patient, who the heck am I? It's kind of the way, other than the person going through whatever I'm going through. But I just have this almost like to a naive amount, too much respect for either to ask my pharmacist or my doctor at times to go, this is making me feel this way. Is there any way I can do a lower dose or something like, because half the time I'm like, what do I know? You know what I mean? So that makes total sense to kind of be like, hey, one, I got to establish an open line of communication with the patient if I'm greater health, right? That's what job number one as that case manager probably is, like, tell me how you're doing. Like, and then I could go advocate for you if I feel like we need to, right?
100%. And that's, And that's what we wanted to do for that patient population. And then also to sell over-the-counter products that make our patients feel seen and heard. So one of the most popular products culturally, which I didn't know in our community, was a product called Father's John's. And that is a when people have colds, it's a cough syrup. for people who have colds, right? And so it's like NyQuil. But again, it's like a cough suppressant. But again, I started to go in the community and people started to ask, hey, do you have Father John's? We don't like this new stuff. We want things that our grandmother gave us. Do you have baking soda? Do you have prune juice? Do you have, right? Again, there are things, these cultural products that people in our community are asking for that we had to put on our shelves to make sure we're selling. Again, to be culture responsive, that makes people feel like, oh, this is for us.
Yeah, they get me. Right.
Exactly. They get me. They have the things that we actually are going to use on their shelves. And so those are some of the things that we learned, and those are some of the things that we responded to.
Yeah, and I go back to that. I know I'm shoving this book down everybody's throat right now, but I go back to like how to make someone really feel welcome when walking in those doors is have the products, your customer base, whether it's culturally diverse in that way or just tested the way you've tested it, there for them because you just know your customers locally. You just do. So that's a huge part of it. I wanted to touch on a little bit of the employer programs or some things you guys do with those. Can you expand a little bit on like I do feel like you've got some relationships with employers, and maybe that's scale, maybe that's just at one pharmacy. I've seen one pharmacy have great relationships with employers too. So can you talk a little bit about that, what you see there, how you feel like independent pharmacy maybe is a little unique in the sense of whether it's vaccination clinics or another Y and Z?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that we can do, right? I mean, the rate limiting step to CVS and Walgreens is they can't do charge accounts.
Right.
Right? They can take every other payment in the world.
That's true.
I think they could probably take Zelle at this point, but
some Venmo.
They'll take whatever you can give them, but they can't do charge accounts. And there's a lot of especially in South Carolina, there's a lot of manufacturing plants or facilities that are family owned, right? They're good sized businesses. And, they want to take care of their employees, but they don't know that they really want to have a pharmacy program in their benefits. So they just partner with us. We fill their scripts with a little bit of a markup, send them a account every month, and then they pay it. And it works out great. Or if it's a really labor intensive group, we've had those employers where instead of having workers' comp issues and things, they're self-insured on their workers' comp. And they send us over the patients, and we fill their ibuprofen and pain medicine when they get hurt at work and send them on their way and build a company. And, it just, for those companies that are out there wanting to be self-insured, the independent pharmacy is the place to be for them. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to have a PBM. You don't need to have a card. You don't need to have, they just need to call us and say, hey, fill Sally's stuff, or fax us a document and say, fill Susie's stuff. We're approving it. And it's just such an easier process for these places. And once they recognize that, it just makes their bookkeeping, their insurance premiums go down. Everything is easy when they do it that way. And there's some that don't realize it and they pay the fees for all the stuff. But others that are looking at being self-insured because insurance is probably their second biggest expense now besides payroll. I mean, it's crazy. So they're looking for alternatives.
Got it. That makes sense. And it sounds like your message to other like pharmacists and owners is highlight how easy it is to work with you. Highlight, absolutely. Man, I can run AR all day, or whatever that is. Oh, what do you need? You need that kind of form. You're just going to you just need to fax this to us. I can take that. No problem. I'll just throw it in my queue and we'll work. So that's a really good message to be like, hey, look, not only can you do the things, but highlight how easy you can make it to do the things that they're trying to do.
And that's the thing that we focus on with all of our relationships that we have with employers or doctors or whoever. We're easy, right? Mm-hmm. What obstacles do you have? Mm-hmm. What are the pain points that you have? Let us solve your pain points. And we work through that process. And a lot of doctors are still, they're still nervous about Stark laws. Oh, I can't refer them to you. I'm going to get in so much trouble. And they have the issue. It's like, look, if we're offering a service that nobody else offers, you can send them to us. It's okay. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're, oh, well, I can't send them to you because that other pharmacy's offering the same service. Nobody's offering it. Mm-hmm. There's me and CVS in the town. CVS is not going to do it. I'm going to do it. So you're not breaking any rules. And getting them over that, I mean, they've just they're scared, right? They really are. But once you talk them through it and understand, that's fine. And it's, that leads into other things that we're doing, 340B, right? You'd be a contract pharmacy and you just do it, and it goes on and it works. And it's not like it's rocket science. There's several platforms out there that just make it easy to use a TPA. And yeah, you're not making 30%, but that's not what we're shooting for here. If I'm filling this drug as a regular patient, I'm lucky to get 3%, 4%. But if I'm at 340B and I get 15 or 20 or something, I mean, come on, it's a no-brainer. And the facility, they make a ton of money off these things. So everybody's kind of sad on 340B right now and saying it's going away, elimination. It's still viable in the workplace that we're in today.
Yep. No.
If it wasn't, CVS wouldn't be signing up every doctor in town.
100%. Like if you go look, I don't know if anybody knows those websites, but you can go look at the HRSA website and you can just see all the different contract pharmacies that exist in there. Both Walgreens and CVS are the biggest players in that space in general.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
There's money in there for everyone in that spot.
If you're losing money on a script, I feel like you really have to be analytical about that and do more than just look at the rest of their profile, because the problem is probably not that individual patient or drug, but much deeper into the third party and the PCN and the group and those different elements of those third party contracts. So if you are losing money on a prescription for a patient, how would you start to analyze that to look at your pharmacy as a whole and not just that one patient?
Yeah, for sure. So we tried to build in we call it like the 3 strike you're out rule, right? Like our whole mindset behind approaching analytics is to simplify it down into just 2 buckets of, look, it's good business versus bad business, right? If I'm looking at a loss, I can only control what I can control. And there's really only 3 things I might be able to do here. Number 1, I want to be able to price check it to see and make sure, and this is where I kind of feel like it's important to kind of keep everybody honest, right? Back when we owned our pharmacy, you had a little bit more margin of error, I should say, in the good times, as they call, where, even if you weren't buying at the most cost-effective price, it was okay. Now it is super, super, super important that you are very diligent to make sure that you know where the costs are. And I mentioned kind of in the beginning, transparency. So we've, action step 1, we've synced up with some really fantastic secondary wholesalers, guys like PioneerRx and platforms like that have allowed all of our users to simply click a price check button next to any NDC they see on the platform, and it will automatically search the open wholesale market to find the cheapest available price. Now, not that users have to do anything with that info, but they could simply use it to keep their, primaries honest, as I call it, or keep the playing field level and find out what it's actually available for. And if they could buy it cheaper, that would be a step number 1 that could hopefully reduce the loss. Action step kind of number 2, and this is where Jeff touched on a little bit. We had this idea, this vision when we began building Ugo of making it this central place where all pharmacy owners could come and kind of anonymously share in a community fashion. And that's what we did. We programmed the platform to be crowdsourced. So what that also allows users to do is now have actionable transparency onto what their peers are doing. So if I'm using a certain NDC, I can also check by, what my peers are using for that same drug by different manufacturer, different NDC. And I'm able to click a little bubble to see all the different NDCs people within the Ugo community are using for that drug and how it's kind of effectively adjudicating for others out there, which is really cool because it gives me a trend to look at as to what my peers are doing. So I've got an action step where I could potentially try a different NDC. And then last but not least is really kind of just searching to see if there is an alternative drug or formulation of that drug available that maybe my peers are doing, which the platform allows you to coverage check something and see what my peers are doing in lieu of that. So, if I'm, for example, if I'm adjudicating like a pen set and I'm losing money like crazy on it, well, I can, action step 1, price check it, see if it's available cheaper. Action step 2, NDC check it to see if there's any different manufacturers or, maybe there's a generic available for a brand or something like that. And then last but not least, I can alternative check it through my community to see if people are having better luck on things like Diclo 1.5 or Patch or Voltaren or something like that. But it really does give me that available insight now to see what else is out there that I would have never had any knowledge of otherwise. And so I can use those 3 action steps. Now, I call it the 3 strikes you're out rule, because if all 3 of those don't work, then look, by definition, you've got bad business. And that's something more of like a come to Jesus talk you got to have with yourself on how you want to handle that, when you want to continue servicing the losses. And again, it's hard, because I think a lot of pharmacy owners are having to realize that they're having to pivot slightly their business model entirely based on kind of like taking what the market gives you, right? If pharmacy is not productive or profitable in a certain area that you've been focusing on forever, you might have to look into, rebranding the pharmacy or remarketing the pharmacy in a completely different area.
Yeah. So, Jeff, kind of build on that. What changes have you seen? Has that kind of influenced, what NDCs are on the shelf now? I know in the past, you would look at lowest cost per pill, and then you had to really look at the spread between lowest cost per pill and the highest AWP. And now you've got to factor NADAC into that, and also what's currently in the dispensing device, So how has your product mix on the shelf evolved?
Well, it's actually changed a good bit. And one of the advantages it gives you UGO gives you average reimbursement per unit. So many times buying the cheapest isn't always the best. So if you're paying 10 cents a unit, but you're getting reimbursed 12 on one, and the other one you pay 20 cents a unit, but you're getting paid 40 cents a unit instead, your return is better. So it allows you to look past that. Plus, what we can do is you can compare, per bin, PCN, whatever group, and see which one's better. So on some, a pen needle made by one manufacturer may be better with this bin and group, but on a different one, it may be a different one. And it requires a little work, so it's not real easy, but it's just something that if you're losing money on insulin, you got to make money on the syringes or the pen needles or whatever, your strips, whatever. And it really speeds up the process, because what I like is I can type in diabetic test strips and for a bin PCN, and then just hit the drop down and it lists every one of them. And luckily now they've got it where it's got a little brand button, and as it hovers over, it tells you what brand it is. And you just go down and you can then you can match up your best vendor prices with your best reimbursement, and that can be your preferred for that particular one. Another one we've run across is the EpiPens. I mean, we used to have to almost turn away people on EpiPens, and now we have 2 different ones, NDCs, because of the reimbursement we've learned through UGO. You get, good gracious, I'm going late today, so please edit that out. So UGO. Anyhow, it's not a verb yet for me yet. So anyhow, but it's it's just opened up a lot of opportunity for us, and it's made it easier.
The biggest change we're going to see in 2025 is what's going to happen with MedD premiums. So my understanding is open enrollment is going to be extremely critical this year.
Do you help patients with that? Do y'all help patients with that, or?
We don't.
Okay.
We are going to be working with a broker
to
help facilitate that and make sure that we're looking out for the patient's best interest and getting them in the right program.
Right. Yeah. I feel like more folks are looking at steering I wouldn't even call it steering, but just make sure we're guiding the patient to the right plan for them. Because it just kind of seems like agreed about that. I do think premiums it'll be interesting. I'm with you. Like the next 2 years worth of data around premiums, you're already seeing more medical loss ratios, and all of the insurers kind of taking a little bit of hit on, I would just say government funded programs just in general. You see I read stock reports to a degree. I try to read 10Qs or 8Qs or 8Ks or whatever they're called in general. But I've seen some of them take some hits that have a heavy density in government funded programs, whether it be Medicaid or Medicare. And they seem to be like a little bit of medical loss ratio is spiking, which I interpret as, next year patients are going to feel it probably.
Correct.
Okay.
So
good thing to keep an eye out on. Okay, well, man, I think I'm getting a little bit of the notification we're running into time, but that's fine.
I don't feel like I've given anything uplifting out here, Mark.
Well, dude, yeah. I just did not have the pulse on the Optum thing. That's how I did. I did not know that. So it's probably a big chunk of that. No, that's where the state is. But the good news is everyone's fighting. Like, if you want to leave on an uplifting note, I've never seen you were there. At all of the fly-ins and things like that, everybody's fighting. Everybody's trying to move this boulder up this mountain. So for one thing, the group, never seen the industry more united from my perspective.
Yeah, people at least, I don't want to get carried away, but PBM is at least a known term now.
Uh-huh.
Before it was, you'd mentioned PBM and they had no idea, no concept.
Yeah. And I know no one likes to see the closures across the country in general, but you're seeing it both on the independent community side a little bit, but also even the big chains are having to figure out their store footprint profiles and things like that. So it's getting attention from the FTC. It's getting attention from the right people. So if anything, like, I know that like this year is probably tough, one of the tougher years for sure, with people going through and organizations going through figuring out DIR and getting rid of it in some way. It's not all gone. Let's be real. That's the one thing I try to tell everybody. It doesn't mean it's all gone. There's still GER and BER in some of these commercial contracts too. And
that's the point with the DIR being at point of sale. At least we can make a business decision at point of sale.
Yeah.
But then you throw that wrinkle in of BER, GERs, and they're taking money back from 2021.
I know. It just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't. But it's going to take probably some litigious efforts, really. Like, we're seeing some lawsuits get won, which is good. We're seeing some legislation get happening. So if you're going to leave on a positive note, that's a good thing. That part is good. The industry's united. And more people just other than pharmacists understand what's happening now. You're seeing pharmacy deserts be created a little bit, and that's getting the attention of legislators. Right. And patients and providers, you name it. So we're going to have to use it. Is the way I see it. So,
and it's unfortunate that after what community pharmacy did for COVID,
I know.
It seemed like it was pretty quickly forgotten.
Yeah, you guys, and yeah, I remember you were one of the first people we had on talking about it. You guys so delivered for your community in general.
And we were waiting on vaccine. We were ready to go a month before we could get vaccine, and that was frustrating.
Yeah. I remember those efforts. You're so right to go from like probably I wouldn't say I'm going to say it, the main hero of like getting folks vaccinated in the country and getting out of this pandemic and getting into a new normal. Haven't said that word in a while, but yeah, to go okay. Now this is the state. So it's everybody put your gloves back on, you know, put your gloves
Let's go on. 10 rounds.
Yeah. Everybody put your gloves back on, man. We got a big enemy. We got to go beat up a little bit, just to get something fair really for everybody.
Right.
Well, good stuff.
Sustainable.
Sustainable
in alignment.
That's what it's about. It's about
a novel concept.
Right. And saving pharmacy really is what, I don't mean to be too, grand about it, but that's to me what it is that everybody's out there doing. Every time I see somebody going, I went and talked to my local whoever or my state rep or whatever, I'm like, thank you. These are customers I've served that we're trying to do the same thing for. So I do feel like sometimes when I just talk to folks in general, and I'd like to get your perspective, you talk to a lot of your own group and you talk to a lot of folks that may be looking to sell their stores as well. You talk to a lot of those folks. And I do feel like sometimes it's easy to be at I'm just going to say in Pioneer, it's called the fill station, but it's easy to be at like the check station. You're doing pharmacist verification and going, man, I can't keep filling this script. And then you go in the back end and you look at it, and the ones who have the time and do the due diligence may go, oh, actually, that's not the right decision. Let me go put some of this in. But I wanted to get your thoughts on monitoring what you got to monitor to make sure you're making the right call.
Yeah, no, you're spot on there. And again, that goes back to data, goes back to technology. But we as pharmacists and pharmacy owners, I mean, it even goes back to what you said with us bringing up and teaching a young pharmacist or a graduate about business. We go to pharmacy school. I encourage people to take business classes, in pharmacy school if you're going to go into business, because you need to know that. We don't know how to read a P&L and balance sheet coming out of college. Sure. And so, at the end of the day, it's how profitable are you at the end of the day? What's your net profit? Your costs, minus your revenue. Here you are. How that all bleeds out. But you're spot on those scripts, because there are some contracts out there that are horrible. ESI is eating people alive. I mean, I'm not going to pull any punches there. They're eating them alive. But we're very transactional. And pharmacists and pharmacy owners are transactional. So we see that loss and we panic, or we get a phone call from a secondary or tertiary wholesaler, and they've got a deal on that drug. And okay, if I buy that drug right now, I'm getting it at that price right there. However, you might have just screwed up your whole algorithm for your buying, and you might miss a tier on a potential rebate or an incentive with your wholesaler. And so we have to get past the transactional, because at the end of the day, it's not that one claim. It's what your business is doing at the end of the day, profit wise. Maybe the generics made up for that loss. We've seen that a lot in our group in these segments. What if that script was a 340B script?
Oh,
right?
That's fair.
So so right now you lost 20 on paper, but you actually made 60 on the 340B side. So you have net 40. Why would you turn that away? So, and then also, if you start kicking a lot of business away or saying no to certain PBMs, and granted, there's thresholds for this. I'm not saying take it all. Trust me. But there's thresholds for this that, if you move $500,000 off your purchase side by not taking a certain plan, have you just jeopardized a level of, generics that, a generic tier or a brand incentive or whatever that looks like now for your whole book of business? And so then at the end of the day, you were losing, let's say, $30,000 on doing that one plan, but you lost $70,000 over here if you got rid of the whole thing, right? Because of the buy side. So there's a lot. It's more than a three-headed monster,
isn't it?
But we got to get past the transactional, and then when you find those claims, dig in, look at the data. If you can identify that certain claims are just bad ones, then you start plucking them out. Right? It's like just plucking the feather off the peacock. Take one out, take another one out. And at the end of the day, the peacock's still beautiful, but it's just missing a few feathers.
Right. And it'll regrow good ones. It'll regrow good ones. It's kind of like the message, it sounds like, is don't get, I think casinos do this, right? Don't get trapped in the casino, right? It's like, because they got all the windows are closed, right? There's no way to actually look outside and things like that. You're just getting like focused on this thing that's in front of you going, hey, you may, on the flip side of that, you may look like you're making a lot of money on stuff. And then you go back and you look at your contract on the back end, you get out of the casino and you're like, oh, I'm not, not at all.
And that's a good point too, because oftentimes, a lot of these pharmacies, the ones that are coming to me that want to be bought, they don't have their costs in right. Their EDI files aren't, their cost files aren't feeding correctly. Yeah. So again, too, they're looking at bad data. And they're making decisions on potentially bad data, or you maybe have an old obsolete NDC. I mean, a lot of that stuff's gone away with technology, but those still pop up. So get away from the transactional anxiety, and really work the data and look at it and make an educated decision on yay or nay on certain claims.
I'm sure that's a clinical services lens too that you're layering on as well. Like, yeah, sure, you may be almost net negative with the patient on the fills, but obviously maybe they're part of XYZ in some way from the clinical services side. I feel like you've really leaned into all of that as well.
So for 10 years or more, we've been banging this clinical services, bell. And I've listened to talks, and I've, at NCPA and wherever it is, wholesalers, Cardinal, whatever, McKesson, ABC, or I think they got a new name now. Anyways, every time I listen to them, there's no ROI. When I say that, real ROI, they can justify having a pharmacist put those effort into it and make that pharmacist hours plus some to put to the bottom line. And that's one of the things that's on my top priority list, and why we hired Tara as well, is we're building out a whole clinical services program. And it goes right into, you say, you may lose a little bit on that script, but if that patient qualifies for some clinical services that we can pick 60, 70, 80 bucks up on, and then again, that patient's worth keeping. Or, and I think we talked about this in the past too, we have some really unique front ends in some of our stores, with either high-end supplements, or we're using naturopaths and herbalists as our employees on the floor. So patients come in and see them. So we may lose on the pharmacy side, but we're really winning on the front end side on these patients too. So again, another layer to layer in there.
Thank you for watching the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more pharmacy professionals like you.